talk about how I became the villain in the story. We got to talk about it. I'm going to share how I became the villain in the story. See if you can relate. I know that there are some people who will benefit from hearing about this because I know that there are some of us who are going through this, or will go through this as well. So let's talk about, I was an educator. I moved into consulting as a way to bring more income into my household and to have more free time to be able to live my life. And in doing so, I had to let go a lot of the habits and routines that I had developed in the school system. And that was really hard. And so, one of the things that I noticed is that as educators, we're taught to do a lot of things, to multitask a lot, and to take on more than what we can really handle because we really don't have any other choice. And so, one of the things that I noticed that, in reflection and doing the work on myself was that I had to make a lot of mindset shifts and I had to set some boundaries. And so that's what we're going to talk about today because a lot of times when you set boundaries, it creates a dynamic where now you're the villain because you are not doing the thing that other people want you to do. So I want to help you to recognize some of these behaviors. And if you are having a problem with it, to help you to move past it. But I'm going to share my own personal story in just a minute so you can see how I became the villain and how I maneuvered through it, some of the things and emotions that I went through as I always have to when I am maintaining a boundary. Because many of us, we engage in self sabotage. We'll say, I'm not doing this or I'm not participating in this, and then we will do it anyway. And so I want us first to understand what self sabotage is. Those are those thoughts and patterns that hold us back and they keep us from achieving our goal. They keep us from doing the thing that we want to do for ourselves. And so let me just give you a little bit of the story. So I'm going on this trip, and way before now, I've been on many, many trips before. Let's just say I've been on many, many trips before, and I've been in this situation many, many times. And about 5 years ago, I decided I am not sharing rooms anymore. We're getting older, and you just got to have a standard for living. I am always extremely cold. Um, I have a morning routine that I go through that is very important for me, and it helps me to get my day going. And I realize that my morning routine is not what other people's morning routine may be like, because most people go to work, to a job, and so they have to be at work at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, whatever the situation may be. Well, for me, my morning routine looks different, and I do it every day, and it helps me to have a really amazing day. It's a part of my self care, and it's not something that I'm willing to compromise. So when you share a room with someone, you end up having to compromise how you do things because it's not in alignment with what that person needs. So me waking up early in the morning, getting my coffee, requiring some silence for me to do my meditation, and the little things that kind of interrupt that, people walking around, bathroom door slamming, toilet being flushed, that is very disruptive to the way that I've set my morning up. And so, even the idea that I talk to my husband when I'm out of town, I talk to him every morning on the phone, and I talk to him every night on the phone. And we laugh and we go over the day and we do some joking. But that's a major part of my day when I'm on trips out of town, which I go out of town quite frequently. So that's a part of our routine. I don't want to have to lower my voice. I don't want, and sometimes we're on the phone until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, depending on what is happening and what we're talking about, things that are going on. And we're just having a good time because me and my husband, we actually like each other. And so we get along, we talk about stuff that's going on. I don't want to have to lower my voice. I don't want to have to tailor my conversation. I want to be able to talk freely to my husband and say whatever it is I want to be able to say. And so we've agreed that, yeah, you probably should get your own room so that you can do the things that you need to do. Not to mention, I just shared a room, an entire building at my event in February due to just the circumstance, which I had my own room, but it was in the same building. Y'all, I almost froze that night. Everybody else was good and well. I almost froze because, if we can be honest, most of us are in our 40s and 50s. Many of us are going through menopause. There are hot flashes happening. Everybody else is hot. I'm the only one that's cold. When I say I literally froze all night long because there is one thermostat and everybody else was hot and I was the only one cold, to the point where the man who runs the place had to come and turn my heater on. He had to come and turn the heat on a space heater in my room for me because that's just how cold I was. The bedding was it wasn't like thick bedding, and so I almost froze. And when they touched my skin, they were like, "Oh my goodness, she really is cold." No one else was cold. And everyone else was good that next morning except me because I didn't sleep well, because I was freezing. And so while everybody else got 8 hours of sleep, I had tossing and turning, trying to find cover, trying to, get warm and all of these things. And it was a great reminder to me, don't do this to yourself again. Do not do this to yourself again. And so sometimes we need those reminders to get us back on track, to the point of stick to your boundary. You already know what you need. So let's talk about how I ended up there and how I'm in this new space now of being in the same situation again. So what we do is we self-sabotage ourselves. We will sabotage and don't even know it, because most times we're our own worst enemy. We act in ways that directly conflict. It's in direct conflict with our personal success and our personal well-being. I know clearly what I need to be well. I know clearly what I need to do to take care of me. I know what's going to get me a great night's sleep. I know what's going to make me struggle. I know how to show up as the best me. But it's so interesting that subconsciously we're worried about the other people. We're worried about what they're going to say. We're worried about how they're going to feel about us and all of these things. And especially for high achieving women like us educators, self-sabotage is especially prevalent. We are often driven by this desire to meet and exceed expectations that we put on ourselves and some that others have put on us. But while it can be beneficial, it also leads to distress, it leads to burnout, and it undermines your goal and yourself. And so when we think about how self-sabotaging behaviors, or it's a way to protect us from criticism or from disappointing others. What This is the point that I want to make to you, one of them anyway. When we engage in these self-sabotaging behaviors, doing things to ourselves that is not good for ourselves, that's because we don't want to receive criticism or we don't want to disappoint other people. And I'm just trying to share this with us, and I'm gonna give you more of the story in just a minute. But I want to make sure that we understand it's self-sabotaging when we're people pleasing, when we're putting the needs of our students, when we're putting the needs of the parents, when we're putting the needs of our colleagues, our family members, when we're putting the needs of other people before us. That's called people pleasing. We think that we're being helpful or accommodating others. That's self-sabotaging because A, you're overcommitting. B, you're neglecting your own personal needs. C, you don't want to say no. You're scared to say no. You don't want to disappoint other people or receive criticism, or people are going to talk about you behind your back because you said no. And that's self-sabotage. Some of us, we do what I like to call playing small. That means that out of fear of outshining the other people or being perceived as arrogant or know-it-all or anything, you're going to downplay your achievements or hesitate to pursue opportunities because you are worried about what other people say. This behavior, it limits your growth and it keeps you stuck where you're at. And so it never allows you to really utilize your full skills or to reach your full potential, quite frankly. And then we also do this thing where we don't want to ask for help. We do not want to ask for help. We often we're seen as the go to for many other people. We have a lot of knowledge, we support a lot of people. And so it makes it hard for us to be in a vulnerable position and ask for help. We don't want to appear incompetent, or we don't want people to believe that we can't handle the thing that we're doing. And so, again, it leads us to unnecessary stress and missed opportunities, especially in consulting when there are opportunities for collaboration and additional learning. And so, even when one of the things that I see happening, in which I engaged in myself with this incident here, is procrastination and avoidance. I saw the link in the group chat. I saw the link. I looked at the location, and I saw the plans for everybody to be in double rooms. And instead of me going in and saying, no, I'm going to need a single room, I'd already communicated it once. And then it still was the rooms were done in pairs. And so I knew that I had already communicated that I will always do a single room. Don't ever put me in a room with other people, because these are my sleeping quarters. I want to be able to walk naked in my room if I want to. I want to be able to talk to my husband. I want to be able to turn the freaking heat on 75 or 78 and not blow everybody else out the room. I want to be able to be comfortable. And so part of what I did was procrastination and avoidance, which was, avoiding the situation, which is a form of self-sabotage. And so, like when you put off things, it creates this cycle of stress, and you're doing it to keep from creating conflict, to keep from creating a problem with other people. And then, we have this negative self-talk again, which is self-sabotaging behaviors. That's that inner dialogue that is happening, that questions, like, what are they going to say? What am I good enough for this? All of that negative self-talk and self-doubt and that fear that goes through your head about what it is that you're doing. That's all a part of self-sabotaging behaviors. And again, we do this to ourselves. And so what we have to do, we have to understand the importance of setting boundaries. And one of the things that I realized is that I'm a person who's able to set boundaries. And when you're dealing with people who don't set boundaries, who are not good in relationships, and who just go with the flow of things, they are never going to just be okay with you setting boundaries. And that's okay. Like, you need to be okay with that. So what my suggestion, and this is what I did, I defined my boundary. I explained what the boundary is. I don't share rooms. I don't do it. At 50 years old, we shouldn't be sharing rooms. And I explain why it's important to me. My family is important to me. My time is important to me. And my space is important to me. And so I don't share rooms. I'm more than happy to go on trips. I'm more than happy to be a part of groups, but I don't share rooms. And then I discuss why that is a boundary for me and how it's going to help me to show up as my best self. And so I encourage you all that as you're thinking about what are the boundaries you need to set, like what are the things that you need to do to make you show up as the best part of you. But I also find that a lot of people don't understand boundaries. Boundaries are limits and rules we set for ourselves within relationships and interactions in order to protect our well-being. See, if you're not accustomed to taking care of yourself and making yourself the priority, you likely don't have any boundaries. And so you keep saying yes, even when you need to say no. Boundaries help us define what is acceptable and what is not, how we want to be treated by others, and how we will respond if our limits are not respected. So boundaries deal with emotional, You should have emotional boundaries, you should have physical boundaries, you should have time-based boundaries, you should have intellectual boundaries, and they are different from person to person. My boundaries with my family are different from my boundaries with my friends. They're different from my boundaries with my colleagues. They're different from my boundaries with my business besties. They're different with my boundaries from my brunch girls. So, but the thing is, each relationship is different. If you're lumping everybody in the same type of relationship, you got a different type of problem, because you can't treat every relationship the same. And so boundaries are essential for maintaining that sense of self and ensuring that your interactions and relationships are respectful and mutually beneficial. And so I'm not just saying that you go out saying no to other people, but I'm saying that you do need to recognize and communicate what it is you need, what your values are, and what your limits are. And as long as you understand that, you move forward knowing that you've done what you need to do for you. But let me tell you why we don't do it. See, because we know that we need to protect our own emotional health and prevent burnout. We know this, but then we won't set the boundaries, because by setting boundaries, that puts a limit on what you will tolerate from others. But we've been conditioned to accept everything that people throw at us. We've been conditioned to say yes, even when we mean no. We've been conditioned to do it just to make other people happy. And then what does that do for you? I want us to consider, even in relationship health, the health of your relationships. A lot of people don't even understand what a healthy relationship is and what it looks like. And so in a healthy relationship, you have to have boundaries. Like anything cannot just go in a healthy relationship. Those boundaries contribute to a stronger and more fulfilling relationship when each person really feels and understands and respects the other person's boundary. You have this mutual respect and understanding. It's not just all about me, 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 me. It's about, this is what you need, this is what I need. And if both of us can get the things that we need, we can show up as the best us, the best me, and I can show up as the best me. You can show up as the best you, and I can show up as the best me. But when you don't have boundaries, you have these misunderstandings and these conflicts that makes the relationship a lot more unstable and a lot less satisfying. And that comes from not being able to communicate your boundaries clear and with direct communication. And I do understand that direct communication these days is not favored. People's feelings get hurt because they are used to people fluffing around and talking around the bush and trying not to say what needs to be said. This is something that many of us need to practice: direct, clear, concise communication. It's extremely important. And not backpedaling. Say what you need to say why you need to say it, and move on. It is not your job to manage other people's feelings. And you cannot manage how other people are going to feel about what needs to happen. And so when you think about communicating, set the boundary, make it clear, be direct in your communication, and make it easy for the person to be able to express what it is they need to say. But trust me, if you're dealing with someone who doesn't have boundaries, they likely are not going to respond because they don't understand the whole idea of boundaries. And so that's why you can't stay caught up in, why didn't they understand what I was trying to say, and why are they taking it the wrong way? You just be okay with being the villain. Just be okay. Everybody's going to be the villain in somebody's story. Stop thinking that you're never going to be the villain. You're going to be the villain. And keep in mind, they're not calling you a villain. I'm just using the word villain to help you understand how it's going to come across. Okay. So I hope that you all get that I'm not saying they're going to be saying, oh, she's a horrible person. No, but they are going to be thinking, oh, wow, that, they're going to have their thoughts about it. And that's okay. But You need to be okay with expressing your needs, your desires, and your discomforts. A lot of times we're taught not to express our discomforts. It is okay for you to express your discomfort. It's not okay for you to expect other people to acquiesce to your discomfort. And so that's the difference. If something is not comfortable for me, I figure out how to make it better for me. I don't inconvenience other people to try to get them to make it better for me. So in this situation, I need my own room. I'm willing to pay for my own room. I'm not asking you to do anything other than get me my own room. I'm not asking you to, do anything extra. And so understanding that when you express your discomfort, also have a solution to your problem. Don't just sit complaining about it. Don't expect other people to bend over backwards to help you to figure it out. Don't expect people to change their plans because you have a discomfort. Because again, you have to take care of yourself, and the other people have to take care of themselves. And a lot of times we get it confused simply because this is the society that we were brought up in. This is the time period that many of us have or are accustomed to. And a lot of us don't want to move into different phases of our lives. We want to stay stuck in what we did when we were in our 20s and 30s when your situation has changed. Be okay with your situation changing. And if you're with me live, give me a hey, what's up? What's going on? If you're catching this in the replay, give me a hashtag replay. Let me know that you joined me, and tell me about a time that you had to set a boundary. Tell me about a boundary that you're working through, because I think that this is a topic that we hear about, but we never get to see it happen or hear about it from other people in real time so that we can get a better idea of how to move through our own situations. And so the next little piece I'm going to talk about is, the other thing is, and this just happened to me, when you don't set the boundary, you tend to be resentful. And so I went to my Atlanta event, and in that event, I was in the one location with multiple people, and clearly thought it was going to be great. I almost froze. Literally, I almost froze. Like both nights, I almost froze. Um, it and there was nothing that anyone did. It's just that what I require is different from what the other people required. And one of the funny parts was we were getting dressed the next morning, and because there were three bathrooms, I had my own bathroom, but there were three additional bathrooms that were shared. So the other people shared bathrooms, and one of the people was like singing in the shower super loud, like super loud. And I was getting my makeup done and trying to have a conversation with the lady. And it was funny, but it wasn't funny. It was like, okay, so you don't know that you're singing that loud that we can hear every note every time. Like it was drowning out our conversation. And so like once me and the makeup artist, we were talking, and she was like, oh my goodness, that is really loud. And we were like, yeah, it is. And so, but what could you do? Like when you can't knock on the door because they're in the shower, and you kind of don't want to disrupt them as they are having their morning of getting together. And so those are the types of things that I'm talking about. And so when you don't set the boundary, or when you do set the boundary, it'll prevent that resentment, because without clear boundaries, you find yourself overcommitting, you feel taken advantage of, you engage in activities that drain your energy and that go against your values. And this can lead to resentment towards others and yourself. And so save yourself that time and energy, set the boundary, or you're going to be resentful. Here I am now, 3 weeks later, telling you about how that experience was not the best for me, and it leads you to a place of resentment. No, set the boundary. If I had set my boundary, I wouldn't be having this conversation. And so you have to enforce those boundaries to avoid those negative feelings by ensuring that everything is aligned with your personal limits. You got to know what your personal limits are. What are your personal limits? Don't worry about the other people. Don't worry about what it is they're thinking or how they are feeling, because your number one priority has to be you. Point blank, end of story. If the best way to take care of your children is to take care of yourself. You can't take care of the kids if you sick, down, not feeling good, things are horrible for you. You cannot take care of you. And so you need to take care of you first, and then you can work to take care, help other people. That's the same thing for me. I need to take care of me first. I need to make sure that my needs are met. I need to make sure that I can show up in the best position possible. And in order to do that, I have to be the priority. A lot of us have a hard time with being the priority. We say that we're okay with it, but then we continue to say yes, even when we need to say no. And we got to get into the habit of making ourselves first. And so, a couple of steps that I'll give you to help you to be able to do this. First of all, self-reflection. Start by understanding, what are your own needs? What do you need? What do you value? And what are your limits? Do you even know? Do you even know? Think about in life when you feel overwhelmed or unsatisfied. And why is that? Why do you feel that way? I want you to reflect on times when you felt disrespected, when you feel drained, and when you are uncomfortable. Those are likely areas that you need to set boundaries in. Those are areas that you need to set boundaries in. And so think about that. Identify that specific boundary that you need to set based on your reflection. Identify that boundary. It can relate to your time. For me, I have a lot of boundaries around time. Like, I will not play with you with time. I think that time is the most valuable resource, and there is nothing on this earth that frustrates me more than a person who does not value time. And by that, I mean you just haphazardly go through time, waste time, don't plan your time, you're not intentional with your time. Time doesn't matter to you. Well, that's not me. That's not aligned with my values, because I believe that out of all of the resources that we get, time is the only one that is not replenished. And so I do not have the luxury of just throwing time in the trash can, of just wasting time. That doesn't mean that I don't relax. That doesn't mean that I don't take time off. That doesn't mean that there are times that I just sit and do nothing. That's not what it means. It means that you are not going to waste my time. People, I'm not going to allow people to waste my time. And I'm definitely not going to sit and allow my time to be eaten up with nonsense and foolishness when there are other things that need to be done, or should be done, or could be done. And so, these could be related to your time. This could be related to your emotional energy. I do not surround myself with any negative energy. That's my rule. When it's negative, I'm going the other way. When you're gossiping, talking about other people, throwing yourself a pity party, you're woe is me, everybody's always doing something to you, I'm going the other way. I don't have time for that. That is low level energy, and I'm moving the other way. I want to be around positive energy. So what is the emotional energy that you need? What about your physical space? I can't do a lot of clutter, nastiness, filthiness. That drains me. And so my physical space has to be organized. It has to be clean. It has to be right. And so I have boundaries around my physical space. And the same thing when you think about your intellect, like the things that you want to read, the things that you want your eyes to see and your ears to hear. So identify your specific boundaries that align with you, and then determine what are your non-negotiables. Determine which boundaries are absolutely non-negotiable for you. These are your core boundaries, and they are essential for your well-being, and they will not be compromised. You will not compromise for them. So when you think about those boundaries, one of mine that I will not compromise on is I will have a single room wherever I go. I will have a single room wherever I go. I will not compromise on it. And so think about that. What are some things that you will not compromise on? What are those boundaries? And then communicate it to others. Think about how you're going to communicate your boundaries. Be clear, be direct. Use your I statements. Don't try to make it, a generalization, or don't try to make it like, oh, this is going to be good for us. No, say what you need. I need my own room so that I can go and do what I need to do to show up the best way that I can show up. You might want to say, I feel overwhelmed when I don't have any downtime on the weekends, so I need to keep Sundays to myself. That was a boundary for me when I was working in the school system, because I worked so hard Monday through Friday, which was really Monday through Saturday. Sunday was my day. That was a boundary that I was not coming off of. I felt overwhelmed when people would call me, wanting me to do 1,000 different things on Sunday, to visit 16 different churches, to do all of these different things. And that was the only day of the week that I had downtime. And so I would let people know that it makes me feel overwhelmed when I don't have any downtime on the weekends. And so I use Sundays as a day to recharge and re-energize just for myself. And so I declined many of those invites on Sundays. And so what are your non-negotiables, and how are you communicating it? You got to make sure that you're communicating those boundaries. But then let me give you this little kicker. You got to prepare for the pushback. Not everyone is going to respond positively to your boundaries. So you want to prepare yourself mentally for any resistance or any negative reactions that might come back from that, and just plan how you're going to respond to maintain your stance without escalating the situation. Like, your goal is not to escalate the situation, but you're going to maintain your stance. And then the last part that I'm going to share is, setting boundaries can be emotionally taxing. I will tell you that people that do not have boundaries, they don't know anything about this. They don't know how much energy it took for you to say no. They don't know how much energy it took for you to maintain that no. They don't even know how much energy it took for you to be able to come up with the words to be able to say, no, I'm not doing this. This is a boundary. They just think that you just showed up and was like, no, I'm not doing this. And so you have to understand, people who don't have boundaries, people who don't have clear, healthy relationships, they don't have a sense of what you're talking about, what you're going through, what you have to deal with, of any of that. And so you have to take care of yourself. Make sure that you're practicing self-care and you have a way to work through the work that you have to do. So like, you might have a trusted friend who you talk to about it, or a family member. For some people, it's their therapist. So whatever it is, make sure that you have some self-care in place and know what it is. Like, you need to know what you need to do to take care of yourself. And sometimes, let me just be honest, sometimes your boundaries will be challenged. Sometimes people will challenge your boundaries. And, we see this a lot in families, and I see it in my family as well. And when they try to challenge my boundaries, I just stay firm in my decision. That's the reason why you set the boundary in the first place. And again, recommit to your own well-being and be okay with prioritizing your own needs. Some of us, we deal with guilt. Feeling guilty for setting the boundary. That's almost like common. But if you're not used to prioritizing your own needs, you're really going to feel a sense of guilt. And I just want you to recognize that that's a normal reaction. That's a normal reaction, but it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. Just because you feel a level of guilt doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. And so remind yourself that setting that boundary was healthy and it was necessary for your own well-being. And I will also say that you can't control how other people are going to react to your boundaries. You can only control how you respond to their reactions. And so I would advise you just to remember, you can't control other people's feelings. If someone, continues to disrespect your boundaries, then you have to consider whether or not you need to limit your interactions with them or just remove yourself from the situation. Do you need to just remove yourself from the situation altogether? which many times is an option. Like we like to think that we don't have that option. We do. And then just adjust your boundaries as needed and as necessary. It's your own boundary. Be okay with removing it if you need to, or adjusting it to ensure that you are, being served at the level that you need to be served at. And do it always with good intentions and with the care of your own needs as the priority. A lot of times we'll put other people's needs ahead of our own. But I want you to know, like, when you set these boundaries and when you're doing things that are in your own best interest, and when you are taking care of yourself, you may very well become the villain in the story. You may very well become the villain in the story. And so you need to evaluate why you feel like you should never be the villain in somebody's story. Everybody's going to be the villain, and the villain also has a story. That's the thing that I will remind you. The villain also has a story. And so if we stop worrying about what other people say and what they think, then we will be okay. But I'm going to continue to remind us, the villain also has a story. We always talk about the hero story, the nice person story, the orphan story, the other person's story. The villain has a story too. The villain has a story too. Someone has likely wronged the villain. Someone has taken something from the villain. Someone has, in every hero story that you know, if you think about the villain, you don't know the villain story, because guess what? They're not going to tell you the villain story. They're not going to tell you the villain story. And let me tell you this, very seldom will people ask you why you set that boundary. Very seldom will people ask you what's the reason for that boundary. Oh, what is it that we can do to help? They're not going to say that, because they're interested in their own needs and in what it is that they need for themselves. They're not interested in what it is that you need for you. And so if we can understand this and normalize this, that boundaries are good, they are positive, they are healthy. And just take a look at people who have boundaries and the type of relationships that they have, and the people who don't have boundaries and the type of relationships that they have. And that'll let you know whether or not boundary setting is a good thing, because sometimes, many times, setting boundaries is like a bad thing. It's not something that we talk about. Is that person is being mean? She always got something going on. Well, you know how she is. No, that's called a boundary. It's called a boundary. And the problem is we don't often communicate the boundary, and people don't ask about the boundary. Like if anybody asks me, and even in my previous experience in just in Atlanta, like when I say I almost froze to death that night, I almost literally froze to death. And there were 5 other people in the building with me. But I was the only one who almost froze. I was the only one who was up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning trying to get warm. I was the only one who couldn't sleep, because I can't sleep in extreme cold. But I was also the only one who needed to be at 100% the next day, because I was the host of the event. I was the only one who, by me not getting what I needed, was going to impact what everybody else in the room, whether or not they were going to get what they needed. But again, I wouldn't have been in that situation had I adhered to my boundary, And so when you let those you say yes when you really mean no. We have to stop doing that. And the Lord always puts it right back into your face, put it right back in my face. And when it came right back to my face, all of the things that I had been procrastinating and avoiding, right there, I didn't even have to think about it. It's a no for me. This is a boundary. I'm not falling into this trap again. I'm going to do what I need to do for me. I'm not going to feel bad about it. I'm going to pay whatever I need to pay to get what I need to be the person that I need to be. And I just wonder how many of you all have a boundary that you need to set, or that you're not adhering to, because you don't want to hurt other people's feelings, because you don't want to make it awkward, or because you're just afraid to set the boundary out of fear of the reactions of other people. Tell me in the comments. Let me know. Let me know if this resonates with you, or is anybody else dealing with this. Hey Sherry. Hey Sherry Benjamin. I'm about to wrap up. You're gonna have to go back and watch the beginning of this, Sherry. It's just a good story about boundary setting, why it's important, and how it's okay to be a villain in the story. It's okay. So that's it. That's all. I ain't got no more. I'll talk